Alaska, the frozen frontier, where ice and snow cloak huge deposits of oil. 1973, oil shortage, gas prices, and a nation desperate for Alaskan crude. The risky solution? A pipeline across 800 miles of pristine wilderness, active fault lines, and a hostile terrain. Now, the challenge of the Alaskan oil pipeline on Modern Marvels. This is what 75 degrees below zero looks like above the Arctic Circle. When temperatures drop this low, living, merely being, becomes a struggle. Exposed flesh freezes and dies in 10 minutes. Fingers freeze solid in only 90.
I took my mitten off and instantly wished I hadn't. The cold was horrible and sank through my skin, freezing in place all the nerves and tendons beneath it. The limb was soon useless to me. The viscous fluid of my eyes felt as though they were freezing over and turning to glass. Diary entry, an Arctic explorer.
In 1958, two oil companies seemingly defied common sense by exploring for oil in this harsh and unforgiving place. 10 years later, the two oil companies, Humble Oil, now Exxon, and Atlantic Richfield, announced they have discovered the largest oil field in North America. The oil is in Alaska, just beneath its Prudhoe Bay, and there are close to 10 billion barrels waiting for them. A staggering total of over 420 billion gallons of fuel. The area around Prudhoe Bay is known as Alaska's North Slope, located deep within the Arctic Circle. It is a timeless wilderness that has gone virtually untouched by man. The nearest human contact is some 500 miles away. At the same time as public awareness of environmental issues grows, so does pressure on lawmakers to begin creating legislation that will protect the environment from its most willful offenders. Often that was big industry. Events came to a head when a nationwide rally is called. It became known as Earth Day.
20 million people demonstrated. This was the first time the public had an opportunity to express their concern about the deterioration of the environment, which the political establishment hadn't been paying any attention to.
And for the first time, the environmental movement as a whole began to take on muscle. So they were well prepared at the time of the discovery of oil in Prudhoe Bay in 1968 to take it head on.
The people had spoken and the government began to listen. In Washington, plans were to establish a watchdog organization. An environmental protection agency began to take shape, along with a host of landmark legislation setting federal standards for clean air and clean water. The oil companies announced that they intended to build an 800-mile-long pipeline that would cut a path through the very heart of the state, southward to Valdez. To environmentalists, crude could be applied to the whole unseemly plan, not just to what would be flowing through its steel pipe. By the end of 1968, groups such as the Friends of the Earth and the Wilderness Society vowed to bring a halt to the proposed project.
We took the last great place and we put this thing across it. And that is an indication of our casual contempt for something as important, as fragile, as ecologically irreplaceable as the great heart of Alaska.
But the oil companies involved in exploring the North Slope moved quickly to form a partnership to share in the huge expense of this mammoth undertaking. The partners were now known collectively as Alyeska, the given name for Alaska by its Aleut Indians. It translates as Great Land. An order went out for 800 miles of pipeline 48 inches in diameter, the only size thought capable of withstanding the immense pressure of the 2 million barrels of oil that would be pumped through it each day. The 550,000 tons of pipeline would have to be shipped on huge barges from steel plants in Japan at what was considered an exorbitant price, $100 million. When the cost of the construction eventually soared to over $9 billion, this was considered the pipeline's one and only true bargain. But with the arrival of pipe supplies and crews also comes lawsuits and injunctions against construction from concerned environmentalist groups.